Welcome to Zoe Stories. My doctor gave me the wrong treatment. Now I'm a girl. My name is Chris, and I'm 24 years old. I'm just an ordinary guy. Nothing spectacular about me. I work as a junior graphic designer at a small firm, live in a modest apartment, and spend most of my weekends at the gym or catching up on TV shows. My life was simple, predictable, and I liked it that way. Stability, routine, it felt safe. But then, everything changed. It started on a Tuesday, a day like any other. I woke up with a dull headache that wouldn't go away, no matter how much water I drank or how many painkillers I swallowed. After a few days of suffering, I finally went to the doctor. Dr. Harris, my physician, was professional and calm as usual. She ran some tests, and after a brief consultation, she told me that my hormone levels were off and recommended a treatment to balance everything out. It sounded simple enough, a few pills, a couple of weeks, and I'd be back to normal. But that wasn't the case. Somehow, in the shuffle of appointments, my medication got mixed up. Instead of the hormone corrector I thought I was getting, Dr. Harris had prescribed me something completely different, a medication designed for transitioning. I didn't realize it at first. It wasn't until a few days later when I started feeling strange. My body was changing, and I had no idea how to stop it. It wasn't just the physical changes that terrified me. It was the fear of losing myself, of becoming someone I didn't recognize. What if this was permanent? What if I couldn't go back? My whole world was upside down, and I didn't know how to fix it. I stared at myself in the mirror, trying to make sense of what was happening. My reflection didn't look like me anymore. Not entirely. My face was softer, my features more delicate. My skin, which had always been rough from years of playing sports and working with my hands, now felt strangely smooth, almost feminine. The changes weren't huge at first, but they were noticeable. At first, I told myself it was just stress, too many late nights at work, maybe not enough sleep. But then I noticed the subtle shifts in my body, the way my chest felt fuller, the slight curve in my waist. It wasn't something I could ignore. Panic set in as I remembered Dr. Harris's words, a simple treatment, a few weeks, and I'll be fine. But this wasn't fine. My life wasn't something I could just patch up with pills. I didn't know whether to be angry or terrified. Part of me wanted to go to Dr. Harris, demand answers, but then what? Could she even fix it? Could I fix it? What if I had no choice but to let this transformation run its course? The thought of waking up one day and seeing someone entirely different staring back at me made my stomach churn. I couldn't breathe when I thought about it. There was a part of me, though, that felt this strange spark of curiosity, of something deeper stirring. Was it possible that this new body, this new version of me, could be better? Maybe I was so used to feeling trapped in my old life that I didn't know what freedom felt like until now. I tried to push that thought away, scared of what it might mean. But as I touched my face again, running my fingers over the new, smoother lines, the question gnawed at me. Was I afraid of losing who I was, or was I afraid of who I might become? It was a war inside my mind, fear of the unknown versus the possibility of something more, something different. The dilemma was real, and it was only getting harder to ignore. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. My thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion, and no matter how much I tried to focus on work or school, my body kept betraying me. Each time I looked in the mirror, the changes were a little more obvious. And I wasn't sure if I was more frightened or fascinated. I needed to talk to someone, anyone, just to stop feeling so alone in this. My best friend, Jake, was the first person who came to mind. He'd been my sounding board for years, the one person who knew all my secrets. So I called him. His voice on the other end was comforting, yet filled with concern when I told him what was happening. "Dude, you've got to be messing with me," Jake said, laughing nervously. But I could hear the disbelief in his voice. "This isn't something you just wake up with. Are you sure you're not overreacting?" I swallowed, feeling a knot in my stomach. "I wish I was overreacting, man. This is real." My voice cracked, betraying me, and I hated it. "I think I'm changing. My body, it's not the same anymore." There was silence on the other end, and then Jake spoke, quieter now. "Have you gone to a doctor? Maybe it's something else, like a side effect of stress or something. You don't. I did. I saw Dr. Harris. She gave me a treatment, but it's not supposed to do this. It was supposed to help with my metabolism. But now, I'm not sure what's happening. I don't know if she made a mistake or if something went wrong with the medicine. I could hear Jake sigh, clearly trying to process everything. You've got to go back to her. Figure out what's going on. If something's wrong, you can't just let it slide. You have to fix it, man. But as I stood there, holding the phone to my ear, I knew that I wasn't just worried about fixing it. I was scared that I didn't want it fixed anymore. The idea of seeing a doctor again seemed overwhelming, but even worse, what if I liked how I looked now? What if this was who I was meant to be? The doubt lingered in my mind for the rest of the day, and I found myself hesitating every time I tried to pick up the phone to call Dr. Harris. I couldn't stop looking at myself in the mirror, noticing how the changes weren't just physical anymore. It was like something deeper was shifting in me, something I couldn't quite define but couldn't ignore either. The tension between fixing it and embracing it felt unbearable. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Dr. Harris. She was calling to follow up on my treatment. My heart raced. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this conversation, or if I ever would be. The phone rang again, and for a moment, I thought about ignoring it. But I knew I couldn't keep avoiding it. The longer I put off facing what was happening to me, the harder it would get. Dr. Harris had been insistent when she called earlier. I had to see her to figure out exactly what was going wrong, and more importantly, what I could do to fix it. But even as I stood up to grab my coat, my heart sank in my chest. A part of me didn't want to fix it. That thought terrified me more than the idea of confronting Dr. Harris about the mistake. The changes were real, but somehow they felt like they fit. I liked the way my skin felt softer now, how my features were starting to smooth out. My reflection in the mirror no longer felt like a stranger, but a version of myself I didn't know I'd been waiting for. I walked to the door and paused. Should I go back to the doctor and ask for an antidote to undo everything? The doctor might have made a mistake, and I could just go back to my old life, the life that was predictable, the one I was supposed to have. But something inside me whispered that maybe this new version of myself wasn't a mistake at all. Maybe it was an opportunity one couldn't let slip by. The weight of the decision pressed down on me. If I kept going down this path, I might lose everything. My friends, my identity, my old life. But if I turned back now, I'd always wonder if I had made the right choice. I took a deep breath, and without thinking any longer, grabbed my phone and dialed Dr. Harris's office. "I'm coming in," I said. My voice trembled, but I felt a sense of resolve settling in. Whatever happened next, I was ready to face it. The transformation hit me all at once, a tidal wave that I couldn't outrun or hide from. It started with a subtle tingling beneath my skin. At first, I thought it was nothing, just a side effect of the medication I'd been taking. But within days, the tingling became sharper, more defined, spreading across my body like wildfire. I looked in the mirror, unsure of what I was seeing. My reflection seemed slightly different. The sharpness in my features softened, the angles of my face became rounder, and my skin was smoother, almost too soft for my liking. It wasn't just my appearance that was changing, though. As my body morphed, my mind began to do the same. I would catch myself lingering on things I'd never noticed before. The smell of flowers on the breeze, the curve of my hips as I walked, things that had once seemed trivial now felt profound. The longer I stared at my reflection, the more I started to see someone else looking back at me. Someone I wasn't sure I recognized, yet someone who felt oddly familiar. At first, it was terrifying. I was slipping away from myself, and I didn't know how to stop it. I could feel the weight of this new body, this new reality. The changes weren't just physical. My mind was warping to fit the shape of what I was becoming. It was as though I was simultaneously growing into myself and losing the old version of me that I'd been so attached to. I could feel it in my chest, a tugging sensation as if my very essence was being pulled in two directions. When I went out, the reactions from others only made things harder. Strangers on the street would glance at me in passing, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed surprise. Friends, too, started to treat me differently, some with more warmth than before, others with confusion. I couldn't blame them. I didn't fully understand it myself. Was I still me? The hardest part, though, was how I felt inside. I would catch myself slipping into moments of fear, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. But then there would be flashes of something else, something I couldn't ignore. There was freedom in these changes, a kind of liberation that came with embracing a new side of myself. For once, I didn't feel like I had to hide, to conform to someone else's expectations. The old me, always afraid, always careful, was being replaced by someone bolder, someone more willing to face whatever came next. I was no longer sure where the old me ended and this new version of me began. But I wasn't afraid of that anymore. I had no choice but to embrace this transformation, not as something imposed on me, but as something I was learning to accept. And as the days wore on, I realized that the struggle wasn't just about what was happening to my body. It was about what was happening to my soul. The changes weren't just physical. They were reshaping the way I thought, the way I felt, and the way I saw myself in this new world. The question no longer was, what's happening to me? But rather, who am I becoming? I stared at the reflection in front of me, the person in the mirror almost unrecognizable. The transformation had reached its peak, but now came the hardest part, accepting what I had become, accepting that I couldn't go back. My chest tightened, the weight of it all pressing down on me. I was no longer just me, no longer the person I had been before the treatments, before this entire mess. I was someone else, someone new. The doorbell rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. My heart thudded in my chest as I turned toward the door. I had asked my best friend, Ethan, to come over today, but I hadn't expected to be this anxious about it. I wasn't sure what I was afraid of, his reaction, or the realization that he might see me as something completely different. Or worse, that he'd see through the cracks and realize I was still the same person inside, struggling to hold it all together. When I opened the door, he froze for a moment. The silence between us was deafening. His gaze drifted over me, my changed body, my altered face, and I could see the confusion in his eyes. What happened to you?" he asked, his voice soft but edged with disbelief. I don't know anymore," I stammered, my breath shaky. I wasn't ready for this conversation, but it was happening now, whether I was prepared or not. "I never asked for this, Ethan. This change. It's like I'm trapped in someone else's body." Ethan stepped closer, eyes filled with concern and uncertainty. "You've been through so much, I get that. But you don't have to go through this alone. If you're struggling..." "I don't know who I am anymore," I cut him off, the tears threatening to spill over. "What if I'm not the person you've known? What if I'm not the same person I thought I was?" A pause. Then, his hand gently cupped my cheek, the warmth of it grounding me, pulling me back from the whirlwind of panic inside my mind. "It doesn't matter who you are now. It's still you. You're still you, no matter what's changed on the outside." His words hit me like a wave, crashing over all the doubts, all the fears that had built up inside me. Maybe I couldn't undo the changes. Maybe I couldn't return to the life I'd known. But maybe that didn't have to be the worst thing. Maybe it was time to stop fighting it and start figuring out who this new me was going to be. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to breathe. And in that moment, I realized that this journey wasn't about going back. It was about moving forward. And with Ethan by my side, maybe I could start figuring out who I was meant to be, after all. Looking back on everything, it's hard to pinpoint the exact moment when I stopped resisting the change, when I stopped seeing it as something I needed to fix. Maybe it was when I finally accepted that I couldn't go back to what I was. Maybe it was when I realized that this new reality, this new identity, didn't mean the end of who I was. It just meant the beginning of something different. Physically, I had transformed into someone I hardly recognized, but emotionally, I had begun to find pieces of myself in the process. It wasn't easy. There were days when I doubted every decision, every step I took. But now, with each passing day, I feel stronger, more confident. I've learned to embrace the uncertainty and the unknown, even though it's scary. I've learned that growth isn't just about physical change. It's about adapting, understanding yourself in new ways, and finding peace within that. Ethan's words still echo in my mind, reminding me that it's okay to not have all the answers right away. Maybe I don't know exactly who I am yet, but I know I'm not alone in this anymore. The people who matter to me, like Ethan, have shown me that love and friendship aren't contingent on what we look like or how we change. As I stand on the precipice of this new chapter, I feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. I don't know where this journey will take me, but for the first time in a long while, I'm open to discovering it. The future is uncertain, but it's mine to create. And for once, I'm ready to let it unfold, however it may be. Thank you for joining us on another captivating journey through Zoe's stories. Remember to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a tale. Until next time, keep exploring, keep imagining, and keep believing in the magic of storytelling. See you in the next chapter.